Basically, the allegation of nepotism are really that. Allegations. Flimsy, nothing to them. They are just political mischief. Where is the evidence? If you are an investigative reporter, find the evidence and put it forward. And I would only speak for myself because this is a small society. I have 33 brothers and sisters. God bless my father for being prolific. God bless him that he did multiply. And that for me is an indication really of my own family strength, because I've had the privilege. My good father introduced me to all but one of my siblings. She resides in Jamaica, Laurel. And I had the opportunity several years back, and visiting Jamaica to talk to a sister about whom I'd heard for many, many years, all of my life, had never seen. Heard people like Sandra Roberts and them spoke about her in her days in Boston, but I've never met her. But I had the opportunity to Ambassador Harper to speak to her by phone. And I have heard persons say, well, the Prime Minister brought in all of his family. Well, who are these family members? Each and every one of my family member who is working in the government would have started, hired and promoted by the administration before my time. Each and every one of them, not a single one of them, was hired into the service by me. My brother, for example, Len Harris, who is at the Development Bank, is extremely well qualified. Extremely well qualified. A Bachelor of Science in Management, an MBA, an FCCA, among other additions to his name. He was the second in command of the accounting department at TDC at one period in time, was sought after by the leadership of Royal Bank, where he worked for a while, to come to head the Royal Bank branch. That is how well able he was known to be. The government of the day, Denzil Douglas to be exact, said he had received a short list of persons who he thought will do well to work in the government's audit department. My brother was recruited from TDC, where he was already a graduate in service to one of the largest public sector company, to come to work for the government in the audit department. Not only was he hired, he was promoted by Denzil Douglas, who was the Minister of Finance with responsibility for the audit department. Not only did Douglas do that, Douglas went further when there was a need for leadership at the Development Bank and seconded him there to work in the bank as the assistant to the general manager, who I think was Auckland Hector. And when the time had come, it was Denzil Douglas again who promoted him to become the CEO of the Development Bank. So where did he start from? TDC, recruited by Douglas, and spent all the years in being promoted by the same Douglas administration until I left the government or was fired in January 2013. There was never a talk about victimization because they know there was none. What is he now? Still the CEO of the bank, what he was under the last administration. How could that be nepotism? It would be a mockery of life and living that if the former administration hired and promoted him on his own merit and given the high level of his qualifications, that I were to come in and to victimize him by sending him home. Nonsense. They spoke about my sister being registrar of the court. My sister has been at the registry's office since 2007 under the Douglas administration. So what do you think should happen? The Prime Minister comes in. His sister had been there, started as an assistant registrar, first being Crown Counsel, selected as a fit and proper person to go to the court, being accepted by the Legal Service Commission overseas as a fit and proper person to be a judicial officer, and promoted in 2011 to be registrar of the court. And I come in sometime after and say, go home. Well, how she gonna feed herself? In the first place, she's a lawyer, trained, accepted, went through all the processes of application, recommended by the Attorney Generals of the former administration. So that talk again, it's nonsense talk. They've been there long before I became Prime Minister. And the same with my other sister. They happen to be bright, can't fault them, happy to them. They went, they took in their education, and they came back and wanted to make a contribution, and they had the papers to show. And she too started as a Crown Counsel, and she too was promoted through the system. So everything was all right until we had the fallout. So he wants to kill them. Nonsense. And those who are enjoying in that conversation is doing a disservice to themselves and to the realities of St. Kitts and Nevis. That is why I said do the research. They haven't come in because of me. They were there. And even after I left, they were there. It is my sister Donna who set up the legal aid, single-handedly pioneered a new department in the Attorney General's office. Nobody else could have taken it on or showed willingness to. She did that, set it up, had it working well. Even while she was there, Dwyer Astafan will tell you that he had approached her to be a magistrate. She declined. She declined when Dwyer Astafan had responsibility for legal affairs. So these are not new things. These are persons who earn their keep based on their qualification and performance. That is why they were being promoted through the system. And they would have had to be vetted locally and regionally by the Chief Justice and all of those personalities and found to be fit and proper person. So it's not just a local system when it comes to judicial officers. You have to go to the regional judicial commission and they will vet you and put their stamp of approval on that. Nowhere were they concerned. They speak to my brother at the prisons. Again, my brother in the prisons since 1996. 23 years. 23 years in the prison. How could that be that Harris brought in his brother? My brother was there, worked at the Port Authority in a security position, was brought in by the high officials there and has been serving excellently. He came on board in 96, did his probation. Douglas then was Minister of National Security, promoted him on the 1st of May 1997. On the 26th of June 2000, he was promoted to be senior prison officer under Douglas, long before my time. So when you hear this foolish talk not a scintilla of evidence with respect to that. 2006, he was made the principal officer at the prisons. That is what happened under Douglas. 2012, Franklin Dorset asked that he be promoted to become chief officer, and he was so appointed based on the performance. And when you go through the file, you see some excellent recommendations that had come with regard to the quality of their work. Look at this one. This dated the 14th of November 2012. Honorable Prime Minister, see the following request for appointment. Denzel Douglas. He is a Kittian like I. He holds no Dominican passport like Denzel Douglas. He has been trained locally and at regional entities. The present position is Principal Prison Officer. He has been recommended by the Douglas functionaries as Chief Prison Officer, Ministry of Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs and Prisons. So that would have been after the time he break up the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to put his trial mother in Dubai. That act may qualify for nepotism. And this is what they had put forward. Any other comment? Mrs. Rochester, who is still there, says his performance and conduct have been satisfactory. And Denzel Llewellyn Douglas wrote on the 14th/11 to Mrs. Rochester, approve. Approve. And imagine, it is the same Denzel Douglas now saying nepotism, that Harris bringing all his family members. This is Denzel Douglas' signature based on that recommendation. And I want to read what Elvis Newton said. For Elvis Newton was writing in November. Mr. Harris has established, that not me then, Mr. Harris has established himself as a firm and fair officer who commands the respect of his fellow officers and prisoners alike. Still the same, Harris? No one command the support he has in the prison. Any one of these people will tell you that, including Dorset, well known, including Hodge, including Sheila Connell. All of them would tell you. And everyone in the security force who interact will tell you who is the person best suited there. He is an ambitious, committed, and dedicated officer who is integrally involved in all aspects of the prison system. The officer has a tactical approach to information retrieval, which fortifies the prison security and collaboration with police personnel. Mr. Harris has been proactive in implementing and ensuring the fusion of program activities. Signed, Elvis Newton. Under Douglas. That is why this is a charade. This is a man so bitter that he will do anything to destroy innocent persons. And that is unacceptable. So that is why I say that those who live here could easily have known that there is no nepotism. All of them, on their own merit, came to service. Some were invited too, like Len Harris, like Denzel Harris. They were in other jobs. They invited to come and serve. Some volunteered to serve. Indeed, before my sisters started out as Crown Counsels, they taught in the service at Keon High, at Barstow High School. So their functioning in government is at their own volition, nothing to do with Timothy Harris.